Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger. The date is May 3rd, 2023. We're actually seeing some really good weather around here. Why did I just say weather? I'm starting to let my Oriental accent coming through. Anyway, today I'm going to retrace a little bit and let's go through the evolution of the imperial exam. In many of our episodes, we have alluded upon the imperial exam because it was such a big thing in Chinese history, throughout Chinese history. For a lot of the time, a lot of the dynasties, many hundreds of years, the only way for a commoner to elevate in rank was to pass the imperial exam. Otherwise, there's just no way. Like, if you want to become a government worker, if you wanted to become a magistrate, if you wanted to work for the emperor, if you wanted to get out of farming and hunting and heavy labor, the only way was the imperial exam. And as we talked about before, uh, a lot of time imperial exam were in split up into two categories. There was the scholarly exam, which you have to. It's kind of like the exam to get into universities and stuff like that. Today, you have to uh, write essays and publish papers and write poetry and that's not it. Back then, you had to know how to paint and draw and uh, play musical instruments. So to pass a scholar exam was not just about writing good articles. You have to be the whole package, including, and this sounds totally ridiculous, but including you have to look okay. Like you have to look fair. You don't have to be like the best looking guy in the world, but if you were ugly, then you there's a really big chance of you getting disqualified, even if you had good talent elsewhere. I'm not even kidding about that. Like there were a lot of times when, for one reason or another, people would hire assassins uh, to sit on their rivals, and their condition would be, I don't want you to kill the person. I just need you to cut up their face, make them ugly, and that would be like one way that people would get rid of rivals, so they themselves would be more qualified for the to become the scholar, the winner, the top dog in the imperial exam. So there was a lot of backstabbing. And then, of course, the other uh, end of the imperial exam was the marshal, the people that were not maybe necessarily book smart, but people who pride themselves in their martial arts and in their ability to lead military, the tactics. So the martial exam, if you were to be selected, this was the basically like West Point in the old days. So it's like today's West Point Academy. If you were selected in the Marshall Imperial exam, you had a chance of becoming an officer in the Imperial Army. So the Marshall exam would entail horseback riding, archery, your ability in hand-to-hand combat, your proficiency with various weapons, your proficiency with setting up camp, survival in the wilderness, your ability to lead, and your ability to solve problem, to uh, be able to outmaneuver your opponents and stuff like that. Before we go any further, I want to quickly load you up with a couple of Mandarin vocabulary. To get an exam or to exam in general to be tested in Mandarin is called 考试考试 COWSHE 考试 uh, and this is very much influenced by the old days because 士 comes from 进士 means the person who was selected during the imperial exam. The people who were selected were called 进士. So 考 means to try to test for, to try to contest for, try to compete for. So 考试 means to try to write the exam to become a 进士. So this is a word that is still used today for exams and tests that is heavily influenced by its old world counterpart and tradition. The Mandarin word for school is 学校, 学校, SHUA, I guess. It's a really weird word. 学 means to learn. 校, SHE, like the shell, seashell, SHELL, 学校. 校 means schoolyard, school. The 学校, is school, where place you go to learn. Uh, classmate, 同学, 同 Tone, 学 means 同 means together, and 学 means to learn, to study. So 同学 means to study together, people you study together with, classmates. Student, 学生, 学生, uh, 学 SHUA means to learn, to study. 生 SHENG, this means 生 means the youngling, the young one who is still learning, the newbies, the ones who have to listen and learn. Is a word used to describe someone who is inexperienced, maybe younger or inferior. So 学生 means student. Teacher, 老师, 老师. This is very common. You will hear this a lot, not just in school. Chinese people sometimes just being polite, especially when you talk to someone who has a mastery in music or who has a good accomplishment in entertainment business, in art, someone who's a master of something, you will address them as blah 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 老师, like you would put their last name in front of it, like Li 老师 or Wang 老师 or Tai 老师. 老师 means teacher. 老 Low means old, superior, master, and 师 means someone who teaches, someone who passes on knowledge. 老师 is a teacher, and it is a good way to get in someone's good book. If you call them uh, uh, 老师, but of course you got this person have to be a mastery of something. You can't just like find talk to a homeless guy and go 老师. That would just be kind of weird, right? Uh, Anyway, so I think that's enough vocabulary of the day. We will now move on to the interesting history and evolution of the imperial exam system. Most historians try to figure out that when did the imperial exam system first start. Many of them said it started out during the Tang Dynasty, but there's quite a few of them that will say no, it actually started before Tang Dynasty, more in the Sui Dynasty. The dynasty before Tang was Sui, was a short-lived dynasty, but quite a chaotic period of time. The Sui dynasty, so roughly 1400 years ago, around year 550 to year 610. The Sui dynasty was credited, at least one of the Sui emperor was credited for starting the imperial system, the imperial exam system. It was said that this emperor uh, was kind of trending poetry and art. Like he's a guy who just like really, really head over heel in poetry and art and stuff like that. And he wanted a special branch in his government that uh, spend time to study poetry and do art. Kind of like how poets and artists today can get grants from the government to continue study and practicing what they do. Um, the, this three emperor, uh, had that same system in place. He wanted a special branch of the government to just focus on the evolution, the study, the improvement of poetry and art and literature. So every few years, he would have an exam and bring together all the most talented minds in the kingdom and select them to fill that branch of the government. And this was the earliest form of the imperial exam during the Sui dynasty. Unfortunately, this emperor only ruled for about 14 years before he was ousted. So his imperial exam system didn't really last that long, but it was so influential that when the dynasty changed over to the Tang dynasty, and the first uh, the most influential Tang emperor Li Shimin, we have mentioned him before, Emperor Li decided that he was going to bring back this imperial system, the imperial exam system, to bring in his own words, to gather the heroes from all over the kingdom under one banner. He thought it was great fun. Emperor Li from Tang Dynasty thought this was great fun. That every time there's an imperial exam, you would have talents and scholars and warriors from the entire kingdom gathered in the imperial city. He thought this was awesome. It's like a beauty pageant or Mr. Universe back then. So it was something that the emperor really enjoyed. So he reinstated the imperial exam system in around year uh, 620. Now, during the Tang Dynasty, the imperial exam was slightly different from the Sui Dynasty. When the Sui Emperor first brought this in, it was simple. Everyone show up, you write the exam paper, and you pass. You get a job. During the Tang Dynasty, they made it a little bit more, uh, I would say, interesting, but also a little bit more like how would you say popularity contest. You see, during the Tang Dynasty, it's not just enough for you to show up and write the exam. You also, like I mentioned before, you have to look good. Like the emperor have to interview you, and if the emperor find that you look awful, or he just doesn't like the look of you, then sorry, bye bye, go home. In addition to that, um, to be selected for the imperial exam to be able to get a high mark in the imperial exam, you not only have to pass the exam, you also there's also a second part of the application where you have to submit uh, your, I guess you can call it your resume. It a list of what poetry, what paper, what essays, what article you have published normally before exam time, before you show up for the exam, what have you written? Who have read them? What do people think of them? So there's a secondary part of the application form like that, and you have to get some really good references to be able to pass the exam. And this led to a very problematic period of time where people were actually trying very hard to cheat the system and use all kind of little tricks and uh, weird ways to get around uh, the system and get selected. For example, a lot of people would uh, try to bring their poetry and articles to a household of very notorious, very big time government officials and uh, noblemen and royal families, and along with a lot of food and gold, and or some people will even give away their daughter or sister, so they're like, hey, I wrote this piece. I would really like you to critique my piece for me. And I said, well, just for your time, here is 500 gold. Thank you, thank you. And like a lot of people would go about it this way, and then they would get really favorable reviews by these royal household members and nobilities and big time musicians and artists and big names. And this would allow them to uh, get selected for the imperial exam, which means if you had money, then it's easy for you to get in. If you were poor, you couldn't bribe anybody to read your work, then good luck. It's really hard to get in. There was even a poet who, when he first approached uh, a royal minister and said, "Hey, can you critique my poem for me?" Again, this was during the Tang Dynasty, just to keep our timeline straight, around year 620, 640-ish. So this poet went to the minister and said, hey, I would like to go for the imperial exam and I would like you to critique and review my poem. And the minister told him, well, your poem is really good, but honestly, if I review you, you are not going to get in. You see, because the princess herself, the princess, her highness, has already put in her recommendation. She has already recommended someone else, and the princess has way more influence than me because I'm just a minister. So the poet was feeling really rejected, and he's like, oh, shoot. Well, should I just go home then and wait for another 10 years before I can come and do the exam? And the minister said, no, 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 wait. It's I, I can't guarantee this, but it's worth a try. I'm going to get you an interview with the princess, and then the rest is up to you. Well, in addition to being a great poet, this poet was a very handsome young man, and he played beautiful harp. So, when he had his interview with the princess, he played her a love song on the harp, and he had lunch with her, and then he showed her his poem, and the princess said, "Wow, wow, that your poetry is so awesome. I totally think that you should be the next chosen imperial scholar." And the guy said, "Yeah, well, I heard that Your Highness, you are already recommending someone else, so I think I just wanted to come and see you and have the honor to meet you before I go home, and I don't think I have any chance. Because you already recommended someone else." The princess immediately said, "Oh, him! Oh, hell, forget about him. I changed my mind. I'm going to recommend you. You get to stay." And that's how this poet got into that year's scholarly selection and became uh, hired by the government. So through the Tang Dynasty, this became a real problem that Rather than focusing on their art or their poem or their essay or their article, people were more focused on all these underhanded tricks and tips and connections and social network to get past the imperial screening process. Luckily, this problematic system of imperial exam was rectified around year 1000 when the Song dynasty replaced the Tang dynasty. The emperors of the Song dynasty realized that the imperial exam was a great system because you do end up with a lot of very great people working for you. But it's problematic because you end up with only people who can afford it, people who are rich and people who have connection, people who are recommended by people they know and all that stuff. So during the Song Dynasty, the imperial exam was changed again, and now when you come and write the exam, it's more like how I described it to you in the past when we had an episode to talk about all the rules during the imperial exam. AKA, when you show up for the exam, you are anonymous. You take off your clothes, you put on the gown they give you. Uh, there's no name on the exam paper. No one know who wrote what. So everything is judged on their merit. No favoritism could be played. No one knew what was what. So everything was hush hush and super tightly monitored and controlled. So it became a much harsher system, but a lot more fair during the Song Dynasty. Unfortunately, the Song Dynasty soon fell to a lot of chaos and battle and war with the northern tribes, and for a period of time, the north part of China was ruled by what is called the Liao Empire. So that's some people include that as part of the Chinese history. Some people say it's not because those were not Chinese people. But anyway, when the Liao Empire ruled half of China, they again changed the rules around the imperial exam system. The Liao emperors uh, dictated that only Chinese, the Han people, were allowed to write imperial exam. The Liao people, their own Chidan people, that's the name of their tribe. The sons and daughters of the Chidan people were not eligible. They were not allowed to write the imperial exam. There's a little story here that is actually kind of interesting because if you are wondering why why did they put in that rule? Why did they make it so only the Chinese people uh, could write the imperial exam and the Chidan people didn't have to? Uh, so there was prince. There was a Chidan prince who really loved poetry and art and music. So he decided to disguise himself and went undercover and write the imperial exam. Not that he needed to, because he was already a prince, right? But he just wanted to know. He was like, I wonder if my poem are good enough. I wonder, like, if I was to write the exam, how I would fare. It's kind of like, if you're a big time uh, 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 musician, like let's say if you were like someone like Elton John, and you wonder, hey, if I disguise myself and go do a karaoke contest, how would I fare? Would I get first place? No, so that the Chidan prince had the same mindset. He wanted to know. I've been doing a lot of art and poetry. I wonder how I would fare in one of those imperial exams. So he disguised himself and went and wrote the imperial exam. And to everybody's chagrin, he got selected. He was so good that he actually got selected. And of course, this became a problem, right? Because when you get selected, you have to be interviewed by the emperor. So the emperor, being his own father, obviously, saw him and had a fit. Like the emperor had a conniption. The emperor was so pissed off, like uh, basically ripped him a new one in front of everybody. Like you disgrace your ancestors. You are a Chidan prince. You are not supposed to study. You're not supposed to do poetry. You're not supposed to do music. What? You think we fought the Chinese people so hard, so many years, just so you can do poetry? Yeah, those are the kind of things that my father said to me about immigration, right? Like a lot of us who were sons and daughters of immigrants, you probably can relate to that. What? You want to play music? Did I bring you all the way from Vietnam so you can play music? If you want to play music, you stay in Vietnam. Things like that, right? Um, so the emperor basically did that to the prince. Like, what? You think I fought the Chinese people to build this empire for you to play music, for you to write poetry? You are a disgrace. And so the prince said to ask his dad. The prince asked his dad, and he said, well, what's the big deal? All I wanted to do was see if I would be selected. What's the problem? And the emperor said, there is a reason, okay? There is a reason why we let Chinese people write the exam and our own people do not write the exam. Because history has proven that Chinese people like poetry and music, and in the end, they got defeated by us. We don't do poetry or music, we just practice martial art and warfare our whole life. Okay, so if you want to do music and art, you are going to be like the losers. You are going to uh, neglect your martial art and your warfare. So in this little lecture, it gives us a glimpse on why the rule was in place. They wanted the Chinese people to keep writing their imperial exam because they believed that scholars were weak and pointless, and they wanted to keep Chinese people that way. Uh, Now, the prince later did uh, prove his father wrong when him and his dad went hunting, and the prince ended up performing way better during the hunt. His archery skills were amazing, and that pretty much shut his dad up. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So that was during the Liao Empire's rule of part of China. After Liao Empire, it was the Yuan dynasty, which was when Chinese people were ruled by uh, the Mongols, the Mongolian people ruled China. And during that period of time, uh, for a lot of it, the Mongols actually outlawed the imperial exam altogether because they didn't want Chinese people to be educated. They didn't want Chinese people to be smart because they believed that if Chinese people were smart and educated, then Chinese people would rebel and throw them out of China, and there would be a rebellion and all that stuff. So the imperial exam system was largely thrown out by the wayside for much of the Yuan dynasty and only reinstated near the end of the Yuan dynasty. Uh, but by that time, a lot of people were already uh, not scholars because when there's no exam, then no one's studying or uh, uh, writing poetry or articles, and so by the time when they try to reinstate the imperial exam, the quality of people that came to write the exam were very, very, very bad. The imperial exam system was fully reinstated during the Ming Dynasty after the Ming Emperor Zhu overthrew the Mongols and chucked them out of China, and he reinstated the imperial exam. Emperor Zhu of the Ming Dynasty said he has a very famous quote. He said, uh, "You can conquer, uh, you can conquer and win battles with soldiers, but to rule a country, you need scholars." He himself was not educated at all. He was a emperor that was more known for his tactics and wars and leadership. So he really respected people who were smart and educated. So he brought back the imperial exam system. However, something happened during the reign of Emperor Zhu that again evolved the exam system further and changed the whole format of the imperial exam system. One year, during the announcement of the result of who got selected during the exam, there was a massive riot in the imperial city staged by all the northerners, people from the northern provinces. They were pushing over cars and setting things on fires and trashing people's houses and stores, and they were uh, leaving pamphlets everywhere saying that the imperial exam is fixed, and if there are prejudice against northerners, and northerners don't stand a chance, and because the emperor himself is from the south, he only used southerners and all that stuff. And Emperor Zhu was kind of like, WTF? What the heck? Like, I what's going on? And so he went and talked to the minister who was in charge of the exam that year. He said, "Hey, is there something going on that I didn't know? Like, are you are you guys fixing things that only Southerners get in?" And the minister was so offended. He said, "Your Majesty, if you can find proof of me fixing anything, okay, you're welcome to go investigate the exam. If you can find proof of me fixing it, then you're welcome to kill me and my whole family." Well, okay, so the Emperor Zhu went through the exam submissions and interviewed all the people that got selected. And in fact, yes, they were all Southerners, all 56 of them. They were all Southerners. Uh, and he even himself went and read all the exam papers to make sure that nothing was out of order. And to his surprise and dismay, he found that there was no fixing. Like, he looked at the exam papers from the south, and he looked at the exam papers from the north, and even the worst paper from the south were leagues and miles better than the best paper from the north. Now, why was that? Well, we already talked about how the Khitan people and the Mongol people really didn't want the imperial exam system. So these northern tribes, obviously, through their years of warfare and leadership, has conditioned northern Chinese to not pay much attention to their study, to their literature. So this resulted in the Northerners were very illiterate comparing to the Southerners. So the fact that all the people selected were from the South was not because it was fixed, was just because the Northerners really were that illiterate. However, this led to a problem because uh, the Emperor Zhu, he can't just go and tell people, "Hey, stop rioting. You guys sucked. Okay, not our fault. You guys sucked." No, he can't do that because if he does that, if he did that, then all the northern states were going to rebel. So he did something that was very, I hate to say it, politically smart but kind of evil. He publicly executed a whole bunch of exam officials and branded them cheaters and said the exam was fixed. And then he said, we're going to do the exam over again. And then for this new round of exam, he told the new officials, make sure that we have half of the people from the south, half of the people from the north. I don't care how bad the people from the north are, we need to have half and half. So for the rest of the Ming Dynasty, the exam became this system of equal opportunity rather than just picking the best. So just because you are good, if you are from the south and the list for southerners is already full, the quota has been met. Sorry, you can't get in. And if you're from the north and if you're not very good, but there's a lot of slots for northerners, then you have a higher chance of getting in. So this system is even still seen today in many universities and college for when they are picking on when they are selecting who get in and who doesn't get in. Medical school, law school, they're all like that. They have a name, they have a list of, let's say, 10 people for locals and have list of 10 people for foreigners and have list of 10 have to be 10 uh, Aborigines and like a little 10 have to be female and stuff like that. So it's not no longer just we're going to select the best and that's it. Now there's actually a sense of equal opportunity for all ethnicities and all corners of the kingdom. And that started from the Ming Dynasty. So there you go, my friend. That is the long and somewhat convoluted, complicated history and evolution of the imperial exam system that you hear so much about when we talk about Chinese history. I hope this episode has been entertaining, if not strictly useful or educational. I'll be back again tomorrow for some Toy Thursday. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。